Welcome back to another video on the Crestify channel. Today we are going to dive into what would have happened if Luffy and Vivi never met. If you are ready, then let's dive right in. Vivi was never meant to be a permanent Straw Hat, yet her presence quietly rewired the entire Grand Line. One undercover princess, one desert kingdom, and one warlord were all tied together by a single meeting on a single island. But what if that meeting never happened? Imagine the Going Merry cutting through the Grand Line's early tremors, sailing straight past Whiskey Peak. No suspicious welcomes, no hungover bounty hunters, no clumsy partner called Miss Wednesday begging for help. The moment he normally drags Vivi into the sunlight, Luffy unknowingly grabs hold of a keystone in the story's foundation. Remove that hand, and the entire structure starts to crack. In the real timeline, Vivi is the first sign that the Straw Hats have stepped onto a true battlefield of nations rather than simple pirate skirmishes. She exposes Baroque works, names Crocodile, and turns a routine island stop into an entry ticket to a kingdom-level war. She is the one who reveals that the smiling warlord adored by the people is actually using a secret organization to destroy Alabasta from the inside. Without her, there is no map, no warning, and no reason for the crew to even speak the word Alabasta. Just how much does that change the power balance? Crocodile keeps his perfect public image. Baroque Works continues its quiet awakening across the desert. The rebellion marches without being unmasked as a manufactured conflict. There is no desperate princess clinging to the Mary's railing, no race against time through Rainbase and Alubarna, and no sand-covered battlefield where Luffy stakes his life against a Shichibukai for the first time. That single absence deletes Luffy's first warlord kill and the aura that came with it. No crocodile buried beneath the bedrock. No straw hat standing over a ruined plaza as the symbol of a heroic warlord is destroyed in front of an entire kingdom. The world government loses one of its earliest, loudest warnings that this rookie captain is not just another pirate. He is a threat to the established order itself. His bounty, his reputation, and his trajectory as a future emperor candidate all begin to shift. And the crazy part was that Vivi is also tied to something even more dangerous, an ancient weapon sleeping under her homeland. Without Luffy and Alabasta, Crocodile's timetable, Pluton's fate, and the world government's quiet panic over that weapon all spiral in a completely different direction. This is not simply Vivi never joins the crew. This is a full timeline fracture starting at Whiskey Peak, where one princess never boards the ship and one captain never hears her plea. In this universe, the Straw Hats sail forward island by island, but every destination has changed. In the next sections, that crack will be followed through Little Garden, Drum, and into a very different Grand Line to see just how far this missing princess reshapes the Great Pirate Era. Rewriting the meeting. How Luffy misses Vivi at Whiskey Peak. That fracture starts in one deceptively simple place, the Grand Line log pointing toward Whiskey Peak. In canon, that island becomes the Straw Hats' first real welcome party, their first Baroque Works ambush, and the first sign that a hidden war is already burning in the desert far to the south. But what if the log never locked onto that island at all? The altered condition is small, but decisive. A violent storm front rolls across the Grand Line earlier than in canon, its pressure and magnetic chaos scrambling the log's stabilization. Nami reads the sky, the wind, the tremors in the waves, and chooses survival over celebration. Instead of cutting through the storm and drifting straight into Whiskey Peak's fake hospitality, she adjusts course. Wayne's riding the edge of the system until the log skips past that island and settles on the next destination. One correction, one choice, and the Straw Hats never see the cactus-shaped silhouettes on the horizon. In the original timeline, that detour never happens. They arrive on Whiskey Peak, they party with bounty hunters, and the moment Luffy and Zoro clash with the Baroque Works agents, Miss Wednesday's mask starts to crack. Her panic, her loyalty to Alabasta, and her desperation to stop Crocodile all collide in one chaotic night. That is where Princess Vivi of Alabasta steps out of the shadows and drags the crew into a kingdom's civil war. Here, the rules are different. No landing at Whiskey Peak, no drunken feast with undercover assassins, no duel where Zoro dismantles Baroque Works officers and forces Vivi to reveal her identity. Most importantly, no long explanation on that ship's deck about a desert kingdom tearing itself apart. No breakdown of Crocodile's public hero image, and no exposure of Baroque Works as a warlord's private army. Luffy's crew hears nothing detailed about Alabasta's civil war. Nothing about Pluton. Nothing about a secret organization trying to destroy an entire nation from the inside. Yet the world around them does not change. Baroque Works still exists in the shadows, its agents still hunting traitors and rebels. Crocodile is still a Shichibukai, still the supposed protector of Alabasta, still hunting the ancient weapon that could destroy the balance of the entire era. The rebellion still grows, the drought still fuels anger, and the kingdom still slides toward war. The awakening here is not in power, but in consequences. Only the fuse is missing. The fuse named Vivi, who never steps onto the Going Merry. Thanks to his new ability to ignore anything that does not directly block his path, Luffy simply sails on. No promise to a princess, no vow to punch a warlord into the sand, no desert battlefield to carve his legend into. And the crazy part was that without that snowy river scene, without Vivi screaming over the sound of cannon fire, one question hangs over this timeline like a storm cloud. If Luffy never hears that plea, then who, if anyone, stands between Crocodile and a fallen kingdom? And does the future Pirate King ever even learn that Alabasta needed saving at all? Baroque Works unchecked. Crocodile's perfect storm. In this version of the story, that silence over the cannon fire has a price. Because the first sign that Alabasta is truly doomed isn't a battle in the desert. It's the fact that Baroque Works never hits a real obstacle from the inside. In the original timeline, Vivi's awakening as Miss Wednesday is the hidden crack in Crocodile's perfect facade. As a Baroque Works officer, she gathers intel, rides with the frontier agents, and quietly feeds information back to Igaram and the royal side. She maps out supply routes, learns code names, and tracks how the millions and billions agents move through the kingdom. The moment she boards the Going Merry at Whiskey Peak and reveals her identity, that intel turns into a weapon. She warns the Straw Hats about the dance powder, about the staged terrorist attacks, about how Crocodile is using the entire Civil War as camouflage. But what if that never happens? In this timeline, Vivi never becomes that embedded double agent. Or worse, she is discovered and erased long before she can report anything. There is no Miss Wednesday quietly sabotaging orders. No princess sitting in on meetings, memorizing call signs, or delaying couriers with fake assignments. Crocodile's network of agents, frontier works, and bounty hunting cells runs at full, brutal efficiency, like a war machine that never needs to stop for repairs. The operational difference is enormous. Without Vivi's leaks, the dance powder shipments move like ghosts. Towns are starved of rain right on schedule, the kingdom's weather pattern twists just enough to look like divine punishment, and the people's hatred for Cobra hardens. There is no warning about the bomb plots hidden inside rebel incidents. No early exposure of Baroque Works' role in the palace attacks. Even Little Garden changes. In canon, Vivi's presence and the Straw Hats' interference slow down Mr. 3 and other key agents, delaying orders and supplies. Here, those agents never get stalled in a dinosaur-infested detour. They deliver instructions on time, they distribute weapons faster, and every spark Crocodile throws into the desert finds dry kindling waiting. Just how much does that accelerate his timetable? Crocodile can push the propaganda harder, tighten his aura of heroism in Nanohana, and deepen the rebels' conviction that Cobra is a tyrant. With no straw hat-shaped wrench in the gears, he doesn't need to improvise. The war he is engineering stops being a near miss and becomes a near certainty. By the time the first real tremors of open civil war shake Alubarna, Baroque Works already owns the underworld routes, the public narrative, and the battlefield itself. And the crazy part was that this perfect success creates a new problem. If Crocodile topples a kingdom cleanly, claims the throne, and quietly reaches for Pluton, does the world government simply applaud their warlord? Or does his victory destroy a balance they can't afford to lose control of? A desert without a savior. Alabasta's civil war turns real Alabasta was always a powder keg. In canon, Vivi races across that desert with nothing but faith and desperation, chasing the faint hope that a handful of pirates can outpace an entire civil war. Luffy punches a warlord through bedrock. Punches a king's son back to his senses, and in the end, literally punches the sky to stop a bomb. But what if none of that power ever reaches the sand? In the original timeline, there is a clear chain. The Straw Hats infiltrate rain dinners, Crocodile's smug facade cracks, and his ability is dragged into the light. The moment he is exposed as the architect of Alabasta's suffering, the entire battlefield begins to tilt. Koza hesitates. The palace becomes a stage where a pirate bleeds in front of an entire kingdom, and under the clock tower, Vivi screams against the ticking of a cannon that would destroy everything. Strip that away, no Vivi on the Going Merry, no warning about Baroque Works, no desperate ride on crab and super spot build ducks. There is no public unmasking at rain dinners. No arena where crocodile sandstorms clash against Luffy's fists. No rooftop symbol where the worst of the sea fights harder for Alabasta than its own nobles. The bomb in Alubarna is never found, never dragged into the open, never turned into proof that the war itself is a lie. Without that intervention, the tremors in Alabasta harden into a true war. The rebels never see the Baroque Works agents staging attacks in royal uniforms. The royal army never gets that brief, impossible ceasefire to listen. Koza never has that bullet of doubt fired into his heart by Vivi's words. Instead, skirmishes in the desert become sieges, then street-to-street slaughter in the capital. The battlefield is no longer a manipulated performance. It evolves into a genuine revolution with real hatred and no off-switch. In that chaos, Cobra's government cannot hold. Either the king falls beneath the weight of his own people, or he is left as a powerless figurehead, a symbol crocodile can parade when useful and discard when not. From the shadows, the warlord steps in as the savior who ends the war, stabilizes trade, and crushes the last extremists. Just how much easier is it to rule a kingdom when everyone believes the strongest protector wears a world government title? And beneath the palace, the true prize waits. With the royal family broken and the poneglyph unguarded, Crocodile finally gets uninterrupted access to the secrets of Pluton. Thanks to his new ability to operate without suspicion, he can explore every ruin, interrogate every scholar, and move every stone until the ancient weapon's location is his alone. The crazy part was that this victory doesn't stay in the desert. A warlord now holds a kingdom and a path to a ship that can destroy entire islands. So how does the world government respond to an ally who has grown too strong? Do they drag Crocodile into the light and admit they armed a monster, or do they bury Alabasta's truth so deep that the sand itself becomes classified? The first sign of that choice will decide who actually rules the Grand Line. The government's quiet cover-up. When a warlord steals a kingdom for the world government, that choice is never about justice. It is about control. And when control is threatened, they do not rush to expose the truth. They erase it. The Shichibukai system proves that logic. On paper, it is genius. Take some of the strongest monsters on the seas, give them a legal halo, and point them at other pirates. As long as the balance holds, the government does not care how much blood is in the water. Crocodile fits that role perfectly. To the public, he is a heroic warlord guarding civilians in the Grand Line. To the elders in Mariéjois, he is a useful weapon whose power keeps weaker predators in line. But what if that weapon quietly seizes an entire kingdom? In the canon timeline, Crocodile's betrayal explodes into a public disaster. A civil war, a sandstorm, a rebellion on the brink of destroying itself. Then a rookie pirate storms in, defeats a warlord in front of witnesses, and literally saves a nation. The moment that happens, the government has a PR nightmare. They are forced to revoke his title, fabricate a story about a pirate incident, and pretend they were never complicit. Here, Wishihais, none of that happens. No straw hats, no rooftop battle, no public defeat. The first sign anything is wrong is a quiet change of tone in the news. Alabasta's unrest has been resolved. The rebellion has stood down, and the royal family has successfully managed a transition. No details, no heroes, just a stabilized desert kingdom that on paper is still paying heavenly tribute. From the government's perspective, that is a win. A warlord has ended a civil war. The trade routes through the sand are secure, and not a single admiral had to move. Why admit a warlord went rogue when they can frame it as a loyal guardian guiding a troubled nation into a new era? Just how much easier is it to sign new treaties with a puppet king than to explain to the world that a Shichibukai almost toppled a member state? The crazy part was that Crocodile's real goal is not the throne, it is Pluton. Once he accesses the poneglyphs and learns about that ancient weapon, the world government faces a terrifying dilemma. If they strike openly, they risk revealing why Alabasta matters and hinting that an island-destroying ship ever existed. If they do nothing, they allow one of their own warlords to edge closer to a power that could destroy entire fleets with a single shot. So they adapt. Cypher Paul agents start shadowing Baroque works. Orders go out to monitor, not engage. Behind closed doors, the elders debate whether to feed Crocodile false information, to steer his awakening away from the real blueprints, or to prepare a quiet assassination that looks like a pirate skirmish. Pattern interrupt. Now jump to Marineford. Just picture that battlefield with Whitebeard charging the plaza, Ace in chains, the admirals lined up, and Crocodile not as a chained prisoner, but as an official warlord standing on the marine side. Alabasta is under his thumb. The knowledge of Pluton is no longer buried. Thanks to his new ability to play both hero and usurper, he is part of the sanctioned power structure. In this version of the war, the balance of the entire world shifts. A warlord with a secret kingdom and a lead on an ancient weapon is watching the Marines and Yonko tear each other apart. Does he intervene? Does he wait for the perfect moment to betray everyone? Or does the government gamble that keeping him close is safer than admitting they unleashed a monster on a desert kingdom that never called for help? The answer to that question will decide not just Marineford, but the future of every island that still believes the world government can protect it. A different Grand Line. The Straw Hats, without the Alabasta saga. But out on the sea, something else is changing. While Crocodile toys with a kingdom in the dark, the Straw Hats keep sailing, completely unaware they just skipped the first real war they were ever meant to fight. In the original timeline, the early Grand Line has a clear rhythm. Reverse Mountain shatters their East Blue expectations. Whiskey Peak shows them a town that smiles, drinks, and then pulls out knives the moment the lights go out. Little Garden throws them into a prehistoric battlefield with giants, dinosaurs, and Baroque Works assassins on their tail. Drum Island forces them into a desperate race through the snow to save Nami and secure a doctor. And then Alabasta explodes that pattern into a full civil war, where their small ship suddenly collides with an entire kingdom's fate. But what if the Vivi thread never exists to tie those islands together? The moment the crew docks at Whiskey Peak, Miss Wednesday is just another weirdo in a desert outfit, not a desperate princess hiding behind a Baroque Works mask. The bounty hunters try to ambush the Straw Hats, get crushed in one chaotic night, and that's it. No undercover agent begging for help. No secret about a warlord plotting to destroy a desert kingdom. They leave the next morning with full bellies and no idea they just walked past the first sign of a much larger war. Without Vivi's warning, Little Garden becomes pure adventure with no pursuit angle, Mr. And 3 and the others never stalk them as high-priority targets tied to a rogue princess. The crew fights, learns, and laughs, but the tension is smaller, more contained. Drum Island still happens because Nami's illness forces it, but there is no ticking clock of a kingdom on the brink. Chopper joins not as a doctor stepping into a world already stained by Baroque Works, but into a crew that has yet to see how ugly a warlord's shadow can be. Emotionally, the gap is massive. There's no promise on the Alabasta castle walls, no silent farewell with raised arms and hidden marks, no lesson that a friend can be family even when duty forces them to stay behind. Luffy still fights for dreams, for food, for his crew's freedom, but he never feels the weight of fighting for an entire nation's future. At just how much does that delay his awakening to what a pirate king actually has to carry? Combat and leadership suffer too. Without a kingdom-sized battlefield, Luffy never tests his resolve against a warlord commanding an army. Zoro and Sanji never run a gauntlet of coordinated Baroque Works agents, and the crew never learns to move as a small strike force inside a collapsing country. They skip logistics, espionage, and large-scale coordination with a royal army in crisis. They stay a strong crew, but not a tested one. So when Water 7 and Eni's Lobby arrive, the question becomes brutal. Without that first war, does this version of the crew stand firm when the world government's full aura of authority falls on them? Or does the missing crucible of Alabasta crack them the moment the flag burns and the entire sea starts watching? Balatin. No warlord, no legend. Luffy's bounty and reputation rewritten. The world government doesn't fear a crew until it has proof. In canon, that proof is simple. A rookie who walks into a desert war, destroys a warlord, and walks out alive. But what if that never happens? What does Luffy look like to the world when there is no Crocodile Slayer on his record at all? The canon milestone is brutal. The moment he knocks Crocodile through the bedrock of Alubarna, everything changes. A Shichibukai falls, a kingdom is saved, and a nobody from East Blue suddenly carries a 100 million bounty stamped with one message: this pirate challenges the government's own chosen monsters. That number is not just about strength. It is about audacity, collateral damage, and the precedent of a rookie destabilizing the warlord system. Remove Alabasta. And the entire bounty curve flattens. Luffy still has Arlong Park, Logtown, and the first half of the Grand Line. He still humiliates weaker enemies and wrecks small-time operations. But without a public warlord execution and a royal family vouching for him as a savior, his wanted poster reflects scattered skirmishes and localized chaos, not a geopolitical incident. Instead of that massive jump, the increase is incremental, delayed, and easier for the brass to ignore. Among the Marines, perception shifts even harder. Smoker never chases Luffy through a collapsing capital, never watches a sand tyrant fall to a rubber upstart, never feels that personal humiliation that turns his pursuit into an obsession. Hina never sees the aftermath of a kingdom almost destroyed from within. Pattern Headquarters never files a report that says one rookie pirate just exposed a warlord as a traitor and survived. The first sign that the warlord system can crack under rookie pressure simply does not arrive. On the battlefield of reputation, that silence is everything. The admirals still see Luffy as a problem, but not as a structural threat. The elders still track him, but as one more noisy supernova candidate in a sea of names. Just how much does that change who they send and when, once he starts burning flags and punching celestial dragons? This ripples straight into Jaya, Skypiea, and Water 7. When he walks into Jaya, he does so without the aura of warlord killer. Bellamy and the local pirates don't just underestimate him. The entire bay treats him as another dreamer from East Blue. On Skypiea, and Inel's arrogance only grows when he hears no desert legend attached to this intruder. At Water 7, CP9 analyzes a crew that has never toppled a government-backed powerhouse. That makes their calculations colder, their trap tighter, their confidence higher. And when Inie's lobby erupts, the question becomes terrifying. Without Alabasta in the file, does the government still treat the Straw Hats as a uniquely dangerous anomaly? Or, without that missing warlord defeat, does the entire response scale down? Changing which admirals move, which pacifistas deploy at Sabaody, and who actually stands on the front lines when Marineford's war finally calls Luffy's name. Crocodile the Untouchable. How one victory changes every future war. So if the Straw Hats never crack that first warlord, the entire escalation curve of the Great Pirate Era bends, and at the center of that bend stands one man, Sir Crocodile, still polished, still loyal, and still completely untouchable. In canon, Crocodile loses. He gets dragged out into the sun, stripped of his title, and thrown into Impel Down, where he becomes a wild card on the Marineford battlefield. But what if that never happens? In this timeline, there is no public defeat, no exposed coup, no desert rebellion pinned on a Shichibukai. Instead, Crocodile remains a legitimate warlord whose power and influence grow in the shadows, protected by the very system he is quietly hollowing out. The moment Alabasta falls from within, he wins something far more valuable than a single throne. He wins a permanent base, a desert kingdom with a loyal army, a legal flag, and a built-in cover story for every ship, weapon, and agent moving through its ports. Baroque Works doesn't dissolve, it evolves. Mr. 1, Mr. 2, the entire hierarchy stays intact, now fused with a royal bureaucracy that answers to him. Just how much stronger does that make his underworld presence compared to canon? This is where the shadow economy twists. With a stable kingdom behind him, Crocodile can deepen ties to brokers like Doflamingo, weapon dealers, and information networks without fear of exposure. He becomes a central node, a man whose legal trade routes hide illegal cargo, whose casino fronts wash war profits, whose intelligence on rebel cells and pirate crews is valuable to both sides of every conflict. Thanks to his new ability to play warlord, kingmaker, and crime lord at the same time, every war in the first half of the Grand Line now has his fingerprints somewhere in the background. And then there is Pluton. In canon, just the rumor of an ancient weapon in Alabasta is terrifying. Here, Crocodile controls the country that guards those poneglyphs, and even partial knowledge of that weapon changes everything. The Garossi cannot ignore a warlord who might be sitting on the blueprint to destroy entire islands, but they also cannot move on him without risking that weapon falling into someone worse. So they watch, they bargain, they grant favors, territories, and exemptions, turning Crocodile into a permanent problem they are forced to protect on paper. Now jump to Marineford. In the original war, Crocodile crashes the battlefield as an escaped prisoner, lashing out at Whitebeard and the Marines alike. Here, he arrives under a government banner, a Shichibukai ally whose loyalty has been purchased with political deals struck long before Ace's execution. Does he truly fight for the Marines? Or does he use the chaos to erase rivals, test admirals, and quietly signal to other pirates that his desert empire is open for business? Pattern interrupt. Forget Marineford's plaza for a second and zoom out to the New World map. Picture the Yonko-era seas, with Kaido, Big Mom, Shanks, and a rising Blackbeard carving up territories. Now insert a Crocodile-ruled Alabasta as a fortified Grand Line stronghold, a sandlocked checkpoint every major route must consider. Which ambitious captains actually risk that gauntlet? Does Kid charge through, only to see his fleet vanish in sandstorms and accidents? Does Blackbeard attempt to bargain, trading captured pirates and intel for safe passage while he hunts for his own devil fruit awakening? The crazy part was that by never losing in Alabasta, Crocodile becomes something the world never prepares for. A patient, embedded warlord whose influence stretches from the first half of the Grand Line into every future war. And as the Age of Emperors rages on, the question shifts. Not who will destroy the government first, but which side will Crocodile quietly choose when the final tremors of the Great Pirate Era begin? The heart that stayed home. Vivi's fate in a world without Luffy. Crocodile's shadow spreads across the Grand Line, but far from the war-torn ports and shattered battlefields, the story circles back to the person who never got her chance to change it. In this world, the heart that stayed home never left in the first place. In canon, Vivi's awakening begins as Miss Wednesday, a clumsy assassin, a fake smile, a princess walking into the jaws of Baroque works. The first sign that her courage is real comes when she reveals her identity at Whiskey Peak and begs Luffy for help. From there, every step with the Straw Hats forges her into something stronger. Crossing Little Garden's dinosaur-infested island, standing on the Going Mary's deck while war brews in Alabasta, screaming over cannon fire that she will stop the fighting with her own voice. The moment she chooses to stay behind, arm raised with that X mark, she becomes both princess and pirate in spirit. But what if that entire journey is erased? No Luffy crashing into her undercover mission. But no ridiculous captain who punches a warlord for making a princess cry. Without that pirate crew, Vivi's infiltration stops being a desperate gamble backed by monsters and becomes a suicide mission backed by no one. In this altered timeline, Baroque works tightens around her. Mr. Five and Miss Valentine are not humiliated and tossed aside by a rubber upstart. They are efficient executioners. Vivi's messages to Igaram never reach the palace. She is exposed earlier, cornered on some nameless island, and the strongest people in the room all work for Crocodile. Does she die there, buried under desert reports and falsified incident logs? Or does she survive only to watch the entire kingdom turn against her family, powerless to destroy the lies spreading through Alabasta like sand in a storm? The darker path is the one that hurts the most. But picture Vivi alive, but stripped of title and trust. Crocodile controls the throne, the army, the news. The princess becomes a ghost in her own land, branded a traitor who collaborated with pirates that never actually came. She hides in the underground, moving between rebel cells without the symbol that Luffy once was. No Straw Hat flag to rally behind. No captain whose very presence turns a hopeless war into a winnable battle. Just how much does that change her heart? Without that found family, Vivi never learns that pirates can carry a king's sense of responsibility. She never laughs with Nami over maps, never argues with Zoro about risking lives, never sees a crew that treats a foreign kingdom's war as their own. She remains a royal who loves her people. Addy, but not the quiet bridge between royalty and the age of pirates that she becomes in canon. And the crazy part was that this loss doesn't stay personal. When Vivi never stands on that castle wall, arm raised with the Straw Hat's X mark, the story loses one of its purest statements about chosen bonds. So the question becomes, if that signal to the entire world is never sent, who will carry that message into the final era of pirates instead? The Straw Hat's missing scar. Emotional and moral growth without Vivi. That missing signal doesn't just change Vivi's destiny, it changes the Straw Hat's hearts. Because Alabasta isn't only a desert war in canon, it is their first real moral awakening as a crew. In the original timeline, that kingdom becomes the first place where they risk everything for people who can't pay them back. Ao can't promise treasure, and can't even guarantee they'll live to say thank you. They follow Vivi into a collapsing nation not for gold, but for the simple belief that her people deserve peace. But what if that never happens? What if the crew never walks into a battlefield where an entire country's hope is riding on their captain's next punch? Without that arc, the Straw Hats lose a brutal, shared scar. Nami never stands in a desert town watching children drink dirty water while a warlord bleeds the country dry. Never forced to confront how close Alabasta is to Arlong Park on a global scale. Usopp and Chopper never hear cannon fire ripping through real soldiers and rebels at once, never shaking as they treat wounds in a war zone instead of a simple pirate skirmish. Zoro and Sanji never have to look at Luffy. Hear him say he will destroy a government-backed warlord for a princess they barely know and choose to trust that insane decision anyway. The crazy part was that this missing experience doesn't just weaken their bonds, It blurs their moral compass. In canon, Alabasta proves they'll stand behind a friend's homeland, even when the world government's seal protects the enemy. It proves they can carry the emotional weight of an entire nation's expectations and still smile. Remove that, and their journey through the Grand Line becomes a series of personal duels and island-scale favors, not a rehearsal for saving countries. Then the question becomes, how does that echo later? At Water 7, Robin watches them closely, searching for proof that these pirates won't abandon her when the world turns against them. In canon, she knows they already toppled a warlord and shattered a civil war just to protect one princess. Without that legend trailing behind them, just how much harder is it for her to believe that they'll burn a flag for her sake alone? And when Enies lobby comes, Luffy's choice shifts too. In the real timeline, he has already seen what happens when a warlord and the government are allowed to play God with innocent lives. The moment he screams for Usopp to shoot down the world government flag, it carries all the tremors of Alabasta behind it. In this world, that history is gone. Does he still declare war on the strongest power on the sea for one friend when he's never carried a kingdom on his back before? Because if the crew never learns in the desert how to shoulder a nation's fate, see what happens when they finally step into true battlefields like Dressrosa or Wano. Do they awaken into the legends the world needs? Or does the weight of an entire country waiting for salvation finally destroy them? A quieter storm. How the Great Pirate Era shifts without the Alabasta shockwave. That's the real fracture line in this timeline. Without Alabasta, the Great Pirate Era loses one of its earliest, loudest tremors. In canon, Crocodile's fall is the first sign that the warlord system can bleed. A rookie crew walks into a desert battlefield, exposes a secret Baroque works empire, and destroys a Shichibukai in front of an entire kingdom. That humiliation doesn't just scar Crocodile, it rattles the government's faith in its own 7 guardians, and it tells every rookie watching the papers that warlords can be hunted. From there, the chain reaction is brutal. Luffy becomes the man who defeated Crocodile. Bounties spike. Enies lobby becomes a public execution attempt to reassert dominance. Marineford turns into a desperate stage play where the government tries to prove it still controls the strongest powers on the sea. The warlord system, once a stabilizing pillar, is exposed as a shaky crutch, and the entire world order starts to tilt. But what if that first domino never falls? In this darker route, Crocodile keeps Alabasta as a quiet testing ground. No public defeat, no desert war, no headline that a no-name pirate destroyed a warlord. On paper, the system works. The Shichibukai look efficient, terrifying, untouchable. The government feels less pressure to clamp down early. Rookie crews still cause trouble. But none of them are warlord slayers. The Straw Hats become one more rising name in a crowded sea, not the crew that tore open the Shichibukai myth. Their bounty progression slows, their legend grows narrower, and the world government's gaze shifts toward louder, closer threats. That stability changes the warlords themselves. Doflamingo doesn't have to watch a peer dragged out of a desert palace by a rookie rubber kid. Mihawk doesn't see the title of warlord mocked by a pirate barely into paradise. Kuma doesn't receive orders shaped by panic over a pattern of Shichibukai failures. In a world where Crocodile stands unbroken, the 7 can afford to be more complacent in public, and far more willing to scheme together in the dark. The crazy part was that this creates room for silent alliances. Crocodile's underground network, Doflamingo's black market routes, Kuma's secret missions, all of it can intersect without the spotlight that Alabasta shined in canon. The battlefield shifts from open humiliation to hidden coordination. And the Yonko era. Just how much does it twist when one of the ancient weapon hunters is still entrenched in a former world government jewel? With Alabasta as a crocodile stronghold, Blackbeard's calculations change. Does he still hunt Impel Down's monsters, or target different prisons and kingdoms left unguarded because the government thinks its warlords are enough? The Revolutionary Army, watching kingdoms fall not to open war but to invisible puppeteers, is forced to recalibrate. Dragon has to decide whether to strike the Marines directly or cut out the warlord infection first. Pattern interrupt for a second. Well, imagine the inverse. Vivi not only meets Luffy, she actually joins as a permanent Straw Hat. Every island after Alabasta carries a princess's perspective. Dressrosa, Zoo, Wano, each one seen through someone who knows exactly how fragile a kingdom is. The crew's choices get sharper, more political, more dangerous. Now snap back. In this timeline, they sail past her. No desert awakening, no kingdom on their backs, no early proof that pirate crews can topple government-approved monsters. And that single missing voice quietly rewrites the entire war for the throne of the sea. threading the timelines, comparing canon to the no Vivi world. So to feel the real weight of that missed island, the story needs to be split in two and run side by side. Same seas, same crew, same era. But what if one princess never steps into their path? In canon, Whiskey Peak is the first sign that the Grand Line is more than weird weather and goofy giants. The Straw Hats party pass out and wake up surrounded by Baroque Works assassins. Vivi rips off the mask as Miss Wednesday, begs for help, and drags them straight into a hidden war. In the no Vivi world, the party ends, the bounty hunters die, and the crew sails away thinking they just crushed another random organization. No name, no kingdom, no ticking clock under the sand. That single change explodes in Alabasta. In canon, Luffy marches into a capital on the brink of war, punches Crocodile through bedrock, and turns a civil war into a saved kingdom. The rain returns, the rebellion stops, and the capital stands. In the alternate timeline, there is no outside interference, no exposed Baroque Works plot, no public warlord defeat. The battle for the capital burns until it breaks. Crocodile's plan finishes on schedule, the royal family falls, and a desert kingdom quietly disappears from the map. And Crocodile himself? In canon, he ends up in Impel Down, stripped of his title, used as a stepping stone for Luffy's legend. The man who tried to seize an ancient weapon is thrown into the depths, and the world hears that a rookie captain destroyed a warlord on his own battlefield. In the no Vivi world, Crocodile sits on a desert throne, warlord status intact. Baroque Works now the official machinery of a conquered nation. The moment he wins, the balance of power in the first half of the Grand Line tilts toward the government's side, not away from it. That shift rewrites Luffy's image. In canon, the man who defeated Crocodile becomes a title that sends tremors through the entire system, spikes his bounty, and marks him as a future Emperor-level threat. Without Alabasta, he is still dangerous, still wild, still one of the strongest rising pirates on the sea. But the government can treat him as noise on a crowded battlefield, not a walking declaration of war against the warlord system itself. Just how much slower does the world react when one early pillar never falls? Vivi's legacy splits just as hard. In canon, she is the princess who sailed with pirates, carries their mark on her arm, and proves that a royal can trust outlaws with a nation's life. In the alternate line, she becomes a ghost in the records, a tragic royal who failed to stop her kingdom's fall. Or a name erased entirely when Crocodile rewrites Alabasta's history from the palace down. The crazy part was that this doesn't just change events, it changes the theme of the era. Canon tells a story where pirates can save nations early, crack the government's aura, and expose the warlords as mortal. The no Vivi world stays locked longer in a darker script, where the system works, the warlords win, and the great pirate era feels less like an awakening and more like a managed storm. All of it hangs on one crossing of paths that never happens. Hold both timelines in your mind, because next comes the real question. What does this say about fate, choice, and the hidden power of minor characters in a world racing toward its final war? Your turn at the helm, choosing the fate of Vivi and the Grand Line. And that is where this timeline leaves you at the helm. One missed island, one princess who never boards, one kingdom that never sends a secret passenger onto the Going Merry. But what if that single absence becomes the quiet quake that reshapes the entire Grand Line? Recap the divergences for a second. The Straw Hats pass through Whiskey Peak without the mask of Miss Wednesday ever coming off. No undercover ally, no desperate plea, no clue that a warlord is turning a desert into a battlefield. Baroque Works keeps moving in the shadows, its timetable untouched, its agents never exposed on Little Garden, its symbol never burned by a furious rookie captain. Without that collision, Alabasta does not get its miracle. The rebellion is never revealed as a manufactured war. Crocodile keeps his warlord title, keeps his heroic public image, and tightens his grip until the kingdom either falls from within or bows in silence. With the royal family broken and the poneglyphs under his control, the road to Pluton is wide open, and the world government lets it happen because the system is working. The Straw Hats, meanwhile, sail on without their first kingdom-scale war. No desert march, no rainless sky, no moment where a princess stands before an entire army and begs them to stop. Luffy never crosses that line from local menace to global threat by defeating a Shichibukai. His bounty climbs slower, his legend feels smaller. His early Grand Line aura is that of a wild card, not a world-shaking anomaly. That is the emotional core of this universe. C. Vivi becomes the princess who never boarded, the friend who never threw her voice into that iconic S pose on the horizon. She turns into a symbol of just how much one relationship can alter an era. In the real timeline, her bond with the crew helps push Luffy into direct war with a warlord, forces the world government to notice him, and plants the first seed of fear that this pirate might be different. Here, that awakening never happens. Zoom out, and the macro stakes are brutal. The warlord system looks more stable. The Great Pirate Era is quieter on the surface but far more dangerous underneath, because someone like Crocodile sits in Marineford meetings instead of Impel Down cells. Imagine a Marineford-style clash where he arrives not as a prisoner in chains, but as a sanctioned power player standing beside the admirals. So now the helm passes to you. In this world, how does the Straw Hat bounty lineup look without Alabasta? Who becomes their first fallen warlord, and when? Do alliances like Vivi, Smoker, and the Alabastan army get replaced by entirely different bonds, or does another crew step into the role Luffy played in saving that kingdom? Could anyone else have stopped Baroque Works before Pluton changed the balance of power forever? Use the comments as your own Grand Line logbook. Chart out the futures this timeline creates. Would you explore a what if Crocodile never lost his warlord title in canon universe, where he survives into the Paramount War as an official weapon of the state? Or what if Vivi actually joined the crew permanently? Route, where a princess sails straight into Eni's lobby, Sabaody and Marineford at Luffy's side. Ewertapoff, drop your version of events, your favorite branches, and the next what if you want to see. The moment he steps onto the next island in this series is the moment one of your timelines becomes the new battlefield.